The young Earth native was ridiculed. Then the supreme hunter named him brother. Marcus Chen stood at the viewing port of the transport ship, watching as Station Apex 7 grew larger against the backdrop of space. His reflection in the glass showed a 17-year-old with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stop fidgeting. Behind him, other recruits talked and laughed, their voices a mixture of clicks, growls, and sounds Marcus couldn't even begin to describe. He was the only human on the transport. The Galactic Hunting Academy accepted only the best predator species in known space. For 300 years, they had trained the elite warriors, who would become protectors, trackers, and guardians across 1,000 worlds. Marcus had scored high on the entrance exams, but looking around at his fellow recruits, he felt very small. A massive creature pushed past him, nearly knocking Marcus off his feet. It was a Vrexian, standing 8 feet tall with 4 arms and a body covered in natural armor plates. Its head resembled a mantis, with huge compound eyes that reflected light in strange colors. The Vrexian looked down at Marcus and made a clicking sound that the translation device in Marcus's ear rendered as laughter. "Watch your step, soft skin," the Vrexian said. "The academy is no place for prey animals." Several other recruits joined in the laughter. Marcus felt his face grow hot, but he said nothing. He heard worse during the selection process. Humans were new to the galactic community, only 50 years since first contact. Most species saw Earth as a pleasant garden world, peaceful and safe. They didn't understand why humans would want to attend a hunting academy. The transport docked with a metallic clang. Marcus grabbed his small bag and followed the crowd into the station. The academy's entrance hall was enormous, with ceilings that stretched 100 feet high. Banners hung from the walls, showing symbols of past graduating classes. Weapons from 1,000 worlds decorated the space. Blades, projectile launchers, energy weapons, and tools Marcus couldn't identify. "New recruits, form up!" A voice boomed through the hall. Marcus hurried to join the others. They arranged themselves in rough lines, and he found himself standing between a Korthak and a Silith. The Korthak resembled a large wolf that walked on 2 legs, with gray fur and yellow eyes that never stopped moving. It had a pronounced snout filled with sharp teeth. The creature sniffed in Marcus's direction and wrinkled its nose. "This one smells of fear," the Korthak muttered to its neighbor. "And something else. Something wrong." The Silith, a shadowy figure that seemed to blur at the edges, leaned closer to Marcus. "I have heard of humans. They say your world has no proper predators, that you eat plants and small creatures. Is this true?" Marcus swallowed hard. "We eat lots of things, and Earth has predators. We just..." Silence. The command came from the front of the hall. An instructor approached, walking down the line of recruits. She was a Vrexian like the one from the transport, but older, with scars crossing her armor plates. Her eyes examined each recruit carefully, pausing for a long moment when she reached Marcus. "I am Instructor Zextratha," she announced. "For the next 4 years, this academy will be your home, your prison, and your proving ground. Most of you will fail. Some of you will die. Those who survive will become the finest hunters in the galaxy. And some of you should not be here at all." The other recruits shifted, turning to look at Marcus. He kept his eyes forward, trying to ignore the stares. "The human," Zextra continued. "Marcus Chen of Earth. Do you know why you were admitted to this academy?" "I passed the entrance exams, Instructor," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. "You passed the written exams," Zextra corrected. "Your physical scores were the lowest in academy history. Your strength is below average. Your speed is unremarkable. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses. By every measure that matters, you are the weakest recruit we have ever accepted." The hall filled with murmurs and clicking sounds. Marcus felt his heart pounding, but he refused to look away from the instructor. "So, I will ask again," Zextra said. "Why are you here?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "Because I want to learn. Because humans might not be the strongest or the fastest, but we don't give up. And because someone thought we were worth a chance." Zextra stared at him for a long moment. Then she moved on, continuing down the line. The orientation continued for another hour. The instructors explained the rules, the schedule, and the trials that awaited them. Marcus tried to pay attention, but he kept noticing the looks from other recruits. Some curious, some amused, most dismissive. As the group was dismissed to find their quarters, Marcus overheard two instructors talking near the doorway. "I give the human 3 days," one said. "Too generous," the other replied. "He'll trigger his emergency beacon during the first trial. If he survives that long, the Crimson Barons have killed stronger recruits." Marcus pretended not to hear. He found his assigned room, a small space with a bed, a desk, and a locker. Through the window, he could see the stars and, far in the distance, a reddish moon. The Crimson Barons. Their first trial. As Marcus unpacked his bag, he noticed something unusual. Across the hall, standing in shadows where the station's lights didn't quite reach, was another figure. It was a Vrexian, but larger than any Marcus had seen, with armor plates that looked like they had survived 1,000 battles. The creature's compound eyes reflected light like mirrors. The figure stood perfectly still, watching Marcus. Then, without a word, it turned and disappeared into the darkness. Marcus didn't know it yet, but he had just been noticed by Caithorax, the Supreme Hunter, the most legendary predator in galactic history. And Caithorax had seen something in the young human that no one else could see, something that would change everything. The transport to the Crimson Barons launched at dawn. Marcus sat strapped into his seat, surrounded by his assigned hunting pack. There were 5 of them total, led by a Korthak named Veshkar, who had made it clear from the start that he considered Marcus dead weight. "Listen carefully, human," Veshkar growled as the transport descended through the moon's thin atmosphere. "We hunt fast and hard. If you cannot keep up, we leave you behind. Understand?" The other 3 pack members, 2 Vrexians and another Korthak, exchanged looks that needed no translation. They had already decided Marcus would fail. The Crimson Barons stretched below them like a wound on the moon's surface. Red sand dunes rolled endlessly under a sky that burned orange. The temperature readings on Marcus's suit display showed extreme heat during the day and freezing cold at night. The air was breathable but thin, making every breath a struggle. 48 hours, the pilot announced. Survive and bring back prey. Your emergency beacons will summon rescue, but using them means automatic failure. Good hunting. The transport doors opened, and the pack jumped out onto the sand. Marcus followed, his legs absorbing the impact. The heat hit him immediately, even through his light hunting suit. Around him, the other recruits were already moving, their enhanced senses picking up trails that Marcus couldn't see. "There," Veshkar pointed toward a ridge. "I smell prey. Fast-moving. We take them now." The pack sprinted forward, and Marcus ran to keep up, but within minutes, the gap between them widened. The Korthaks moved like flowing water across the sand, their powerful legs eating up distance. The Vrexians leaped from rock to rock with their forearms. Marcus pushed himself hard, but his human legs couldn't match their speed. By the time he reached the ridge, the pack was already out of sight. Marcus stood alone on the red sand, breathing hard in the thin air. He could hear distant sounds, the pack's hunting calls, the screech of some animal. Then, silence. He checked his equipment. Water for 3 days, basic rations, a knife, and a tracking device that showed his pack's location as a blinking dot moving rapidly away. Marcus looked at the emergency beacon on his wrist. One press, and a rescue ship would come. He thought about the instructors who bet against him, about Veshkar's dismissive sneer, about every species that looked at humans and saw weakness. Then Marcus started walking. He walked in the direction his pack had gone, but he didn't run. Running in this heat, in this thin air, would exhaust him quickly. Instead, he settled into a steady pace, a jog that his body could maintain for hours. It was something humans were good at, something his grandfather had taught him about the old hunters of Earth. "Humans don't sprint," his grandfather had said. "We endure." As the sun climbed higher, Marcus found tracks. 6-legged creatures, similar to gazelles, had passed through recently. The tracks were deep and far apart. They had been running fast. Marcus followed them, maintaining his steady pace. Hours passed. The sun beat down mercilessly. Marcus drank water carefully, rationing it. His tracking device showed his pack had stopped moving, probably resting in some cave. The gazelle tracks continued forward, and Marcus followed. Night fell suddenly on the Crimson Barrens, and the temperature plummeted. Marcus pulled on his thermal layer and kept moving. His body generated heat through movement, keeping him warm. The gazelle tracks were harder to see in the dark, but Marcus used his light sparingly, trusting his memory of the trail. By dawn of the second day, Marcus had been moving for nearly 20 hours. His legs ached, his lungs burned, but he kept going. The gazelle herd was slowing down. He could tell from their tracks. They had been running from predators for too long, exhausting themselves. Around midday, Marcus finally saw them. A herd of about 20 creatures resting in a small canyon. They looked exhausted, their flanks heaving, tongues hanging out. They had been running from various predators for almost 2 days straight. Marcus approached slowly, downwind. The gazelles noticed him and scattered, but they were too tired to run far. Marcus picked the weakest one, an older male that stumbled as it tried to flee. He followed it steadily, never stopping, never letting it rest. 3 hours later, the gazelle collapsed. It was completely exhausted, unable to run anymore. Marcus approached carefully and made the kill quick and clean, the way he'd been taught. He whispered thanks to the animal, an old human custom. When Marcus returned to the extraction point with his prey, he found his pack already there. Veshkar and the others had caught their prey on the first day, then spent the rest of the time sleeping and recovering. They looked rested and proud. Then they saw Marcus. He walked out of the desert carrying the gazelle, his face covered in dust and sweat, but his eyes steady. Veshkar's confident expression faltered. "Impossible," one of the Brexians whispered. "He's been moving for 2 days straight." "How?" Veshkar demanded. "How did you—"
"I walked," Marcus said simply.
He set down his prey and drank from his water container. His hands were steady. The extraction ship landed, and other packs emerged from the barrens. Many had failed, their emergency beacons activated. Some carried no prey at all, but Marcus's pack had succeeded, and the human who they had abandoned had somehow thrived. As they loaded onto the transport, Marcus noticed something. Standing near the landing pad, partially hidden by the ship's shadow, was the large Vrexian he'd seen on his first day. The supreme hunter, Kaithorax, the legendary warrior, was watching Marcus with those mirror-like compound eyes. In one of his forehands, Kaithorax held a small recording device. He had been documenting everything. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Marcus saw something in another creature's expression that wasn't mockery or dismissal. It was respect. The transport lifted off, carrying them back to Station Apex. Veshkar sat in silence, staring at Marcus with a confusion that bordered on fear. The human hadn't been faster or stronger, but he had never stopped. And in that moment, something shifted in the academy. Word began to spread about the human who hunted not with speed or strength, but with something far more terrifying, relentless, unstoppable endurance. 3 months had passed since the Crimson Baron's trial. Marcus had proven himself competent in classes, but most students still kept their distance. Veshkar's pack tolerated him now, but barely. The Korthak hadn't forgotten that a human had succeeded where he expected failure. The Academy's midterm trial was announced during morning assembly. Instructor Zexthra stood before the gathered students, her compound eyes gleaming. "Death Plateau," she announced simply. A murmur ran through the crowd. Even the most confident recruits looked nervous. Marcus had heard stories about Death Plateau, a legendary proving ground where students faced the region's apex predator, the Void Serpent. The creatures were 40 feet long, armored with scales that could deflect energy weapons, and possessed a hunting intelligence that had killed dozens of Academy recruits over the centuries. "You will hunt in your assigned packs," Zextra continued. "Locate a Void Serpent nest. Document it. Return alive. Those who use their emergency beacons fail immediately. Those who do not return," she paused, "the plateau has many graves." Unquote. That evening, Marcus studied everything he could find about Void Serpents. They hunted using heat signatures, had a blind spot directly behind their heads, and were extremely territorial. Most importantly, they traveled in mated pairs or small family groups. The next morning, the 5 members of Marcus's pack stood at the edge of Death Plateau. Black volcanic rock stretched before them, cut through with deep canyons and dotted with steam vents that hissed and spat. The air smelled of sulfur. "Simple plan," Veshkar announced. "We find nest, we document, we leave. Stay quiet, stay together." They moved carefully across the plateau, following signs of void serpent activity. Shed scales, claw marks on rock, the bones of previous prey. After 3 hours, they found what they were looking for. A massive nest built into the side of a canyon, with 3 large entrance tunnels. "Perfect," Veshkar growled quietly. "I will approach, take readings, and—" "Wait," Marcus whispered urgently. 3 tunnels means multiple serpents. We should observe first, count how many." "I don't take orders from humans," Veshkar snapped. His pride had been wounded in the Crimson Barrens, and he was eager to prove himself. Watch and learn how real hunters work. Before anyone could stop him, Veshkar charged toward the nest, roaring a challenge. It was a traditional Korthak hunting technique. Intimidate prey with aggression, but void serpents were not prey. 3 massive heads emerged from the tunnels simultaneously. The serpents were enormous, their scales gleaming black in the dim light. They screamed, a sound that made Marcus's bones vibrate, and lunged forward with terrifying speed. "Run!" one of the Vrexians shouted. The pack scattered. Veshkar froze, his predator instincts failing him in the face of a superior hunter. One serpent's jaws snapped closed inches from his head. He stumbled backward, terror replacing his usual confidence. Marcus saw 2 pack members go down immediately, not dead, but injured, their legs caught by the serpent's thrashing tails. The 3rd Korsak fled in panic, abandoning the group. Veshkar remained frozen, unable to move. Marcus's mind raced, his body flooded with adrenaline. But unlike Veshkar, fear didn't paralyze him. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, yes, but also as tactical thinkers. They solved problems. They adapted. He noticed the volcanic vents scattered across the plateau. Noticed the unstable rocks piled near the canyon edge. Noticed that the serpents were positioned close together, their territorial instinct keeping them near their nest. "Veshkar!" Marcus shouted. "Move left." "Now?" The Korthak's ears twitched. Some part of his brain still functioned. "Left! To the steam vent!" Veshkar stumbled left just as a serpent struck. The creature's head smashed into the rock where Veshkar had been standing. Marcus was already moving, grabbing loose rocks and hurling them at the second serpent's face, not to hurt it, but to distract it. "Everyone, follow me!" Marcus commanded. The Vrexians hesitated. Taking orders from a human went against everything they knew, but Marcus had a plan, and they had nothing. They followed. Marcus led them on a specific path, weaving between steam vents. The serpents pursued, their heat-sensing organs tracking the fleeing prey. But Marcus had studied their biology. He led his pack directly through the hottest steam clouds, disrupting their thermal vision. "When I say jump, everyone jump right," Marcus yelled. They ran toward a section where volcanic rock had piled up against the canyon wall, creating an unstable slope. Marcus had noticed it earlier. Rocks balanced precariously, held by nothing but friction. "Now! Jump right!" The pack leaped right. The 3 serpents, moving at full speed, couldn't turn fast enough. They slammed into the unstable rock pile. Marcus had positioned his pack perfectly. The impact triggered a rock slide that separated the serpents from each other, blocking 2 in narrow passages while the 3rd writhed, temporarily trapped. "Move. Back to extraction," Marcus ordered. They ran. Behind them, the serpents screamed in fury, but the rock slide had given the pack precious minutes. Marcus led them through a narrow canyon that the massive serpents couldn't follow, then across a lava field where the heat masked their signatures completely. 2 hours later, they reached the extraction point. All 5 pack members were alive, though 2 were injured. They collapsed on the ground, breathing hard. Other packs had already arrived. Their faces showed shock and trauma. Some were missing members. One pack had lost 3 out of 5 recruits. Veshkar lay on the ground, staring at the sky. Finally, he turned his head to look at Marcus. "You saved us," the Korthak said quietly. "I would have died. We all would have died." Marcus nodded, too exhausted to speak. "How did you know? About the rocks, the steam, the canyon?" "I observed," Marcus said simply, "and I thought about it." "Thought," Veshkar repeated the word like it was foreign. "We are taught to trust our instincts, our speed, our strength. Humans don't have those advantages," Marcus said. "So we learn to think, to plan, to use what's around us." The extraction ships began landing. As Marcus stood to board, he saw Kai Thorax again, standing at a distance. The Supreme Hunter had been watching, always watching. And in his 4 hands, Kai Thorax held something Marcus couldn't quite see. But the message was clear. The human had done something extraordinary. He had turned certain death into survival, not through power, but through intelligence and leadership. Word would spread quickly through the academy. The weak human wasn't weak at all. He was something far more dangerous. The academy's training hall buzzed with excited chatter. News of Marcus's tactical victory at Death Plateau had spread like wildfire through Station Apex 7. Some students looked at him with newfound respect. Others whispered that he had been lucky, nothing more. Veshkar, however, grew darker with each passing day. The Korthak's pride had been shattered twice now. First in the Crimson Barrens, then at Death Plateau. Among his people, strength and dominance meant everything. Being saved by a human, the weakest species in the academy, was an unbearable humiliation. 1 week after their return, Veshkar made his move. Marcus was eating lunch alone in the cafeteria when Veshkar approached, flanked by 2 other Kortaks. The room grew quiet. Students sensed something was about to happen. "Human," Veshkar growled loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "You hide behind tricks and cowardice. At Death Plateau, you ran like prey. You are no hunter." Marcus set down his food slowly. "I kept everyone alive. That was the mission." "The mission," Veshkar spat the words. "Real hunters don't need tricks. They face their prey with strength and courage." He stepped closer, towering over Marcus. "I challenge you to combat in the arena. Single fight to submission. We will see who is truly superior." The cafeteria erupted in whispers. Combat challenges were rare, but legal under academy rules. They were meant to settle disputes between warriors. Marcus stood slowly. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "I accept." Veshkar's lips pulled back, showing sharp teeth. "Tomorrow. The entire academy will watch you fail." Asterox couldn't sleep. He knew the truth. In pure physical combat, Veshkar had every advantage. The Korthak was faster, stronger, with natural weapons that could tear through flesh. Marcus had human ingenuity, but in a direct fight, would that be enough? He thought about refusing, about walking away. But if he did, he would confirm everything others believed about humans. He would prove they were too weak for this world. So he studied instead. He watched recordings of Korthak fighting styles, analyzed their movement patterns, looked for weaknesses in their anatomy. Humans had always survived not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. The next day, the entire academy gathered in the combat arena. It was a circular space with sand covering the floor and seats rising in tiers all around. Marcus entered from one side, Veshkar from the other. Instructor Zextara stood at the center. "This is an honor combat. Fight until one submits or cannot continue. Lethal force is forbidden. Begin." Veshkar charged immediately, closing the distance with frightening speed. His claws slashed toward Marcus's chest. Marcus dove right, barely avoiding the strike. The Korthak's claws left deep furrows in the sand where Marcus had been standing. The crowd roared. Veshkar attacked again, a flurry of strikes that forced Marcus backward. One claw caught Marcus's shoulder, drawing blood. Pain shot through his arm, but Marcus kept moving, kept dodging. "Stand and fight, coward," Veshkar shouted. But Marcus wasn't being a coward. he was learning. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters and tool users, but they had also evolved something else: pattern recognition, the ability to observe, analyze, and adapt. Marcus watched Veshkar's attacks, noting the rhythm, the tells before each strike. Korthaks were ambush predators. They relied on explosive speed and power, but they telegraphed their moves. A slight tensing of muscles before striking, a shift in weight before lunging. Marcus began to read these signals. The next time Veshkar attacked, Marcus was ready. He sidestepped the strike and countered with a quick jab to the Korthak's ribs. Not hard enough to injure, but enough to show he could hit back. Veshkar's eyes widened in surprise. The fight continued. Marcus took more hits, his body accumulating bruises and cuts, but he was landing his own strikes now, targeting joints and pressure points. He used techniques from human wrestling and martial arts, styles developed over thousands of years by humans who had to fight creatures stronger than themselves. 15 minutes into the fight, both combatants were breathing hard. Veshkar's attacks had become predictable, his movements slower. Marcus's body screamed in pain, but his mind remained sharp. Veshkar lunged forward with a powerful strike meant to end the fight. Marcus didn't dodge this time. Instead, he moved into the attack, catching Veshkar's arm and using the Korthak's own momentum against him. It was a technique called judo, the gentle way. Marcus pivoted, twisted, and threw Veshkar to the ground. Before the Korthak could recover, Marcus had locked his arm in a submission hold that humans called an armbar. He applied pressure to the joint, not enough to break it, but enough to cause severe pain. Veshkar struggled, but the hold was perfect. His strength worked against him. The more he pulled, the more pressure it put on his joint. "Submit," Marcus said quietly. Veshkar growled, tried to fight free, but couldn't escape. "Submit," Marcus repeated, adding slightly more pressure. Finally, Veshkar tapped the ground 3 times with his free hand. The signal of submission. The arena fell silent. Marcus released the hold immediately and stepped back. Veshkar climbed to his feet, disbelief written across his face. The entire academy stared in shock. Then footsteps echoed across the arena floor. Everyone turned. From the highest entrance, a massive figure descended. It was Kaiathorax, the supreme hunter himself. In 300 years of academy history, Kaiathorax rarely appeared in public. His presence meant something significant was happening. The legendary Vrexian walked to the center of the arena. His 4 arms moved with fluid grace, his compound eyes reflecting the arena lights like 1,000 tiny stars. He stopped between Marcus and Veshkar. "I have watched." Kaiathorax's voice was deep, resonating through the space. "I have observed every trial, every hunt, every moment since the humans arrived in our galaxy. Others see weakness in humanity. They see soft skin, average strength, and wonder why you are here." Kaiathorax's mandibles clicked slowly. "But I see what they miss. I see a species that conquered their world, not with claws or venom, but with something far more dangerous." The Supreme Hunter raised one arm, and a blade appeared, ceremonial, ancient, covered in markings from 1,000 worlds. Humans hunt with patience. They adapt with intelligence. They never surrender. Kaiathorax extended the blade toward Marcus. "This weapon has been carried by only 12 hunters in galactic history. Warriors I deemed worthy of the title Brother Hunter." The crowd gasped. "Marcus Chen of Earth," Kaiathorax said formally. "I name you Brother Hunter. You possess what many here have forgotten, the wisdom to know that survival is not about strength alone." It was lighter than he expected, balanced perfectly. Kaiathorax turned to address the entire arena. "Let this be a lesson. The greatest predator is not always the strongest. It is the one who adapts, who learns, who survives." The Supreme Hunter looked back at Marcus one final time. "Tomorrow, you will join me. We have much to discuss." Then he left, leaving Marcus standing in the center of the arena, holding a blade that represented something humanity had fought centuries to achieve: recognition. Marcus stood outside Kaiathorax's private quarters, the ceremonial blade strapped to his side. His wounds from the arena fight had been treated, but his muscles still ached. He had barely slept, wondering what the Supreme Hunter wanted. The door opened silently. Kythorax stood inside, his massive frame filling the doorway. "Enter, Brother Hunter," the Vrexian said. The room was simple, but filled with artifacts from countless worlds. Weapons, trophies, and star maps covering the walls. Kythorax gestured for Marcus to sit. "Do you know why I chose you?" Kythorax asked directly. Marcus shook his head. "I'm not the strongest or fastest here." "Exactly." Kythorax clicked his mandibles in what Marcus had learned was approval. "For 10,000 hunts, I have tracked prey across the galaxy. I have fought every apex predator in known space. I grew bored believing I had seen everything." The Supreme Hunter moved to a large window overlooking space. "Then I studied humans. Your species conquered Earth not through natural advantages, but through persistence, cooperation, and intelligence. You domesticated wolves. You turned plants to your will. You looked at the stars with ambition instead of fear." Kythorax turned back to Marcus. "Tomorrow begins the Brother Hunt, the final trial. Only those I personally select may join. I have chosen 12 students. You are one of them." "Where are we going?" Marcus asked. "The Abyssal Frontier, the most dangerous territory in known space." 12 students gathered at the launch bay. Marcus recognized some from advanced classes, the best hunters the Academy had produced. Vishkar was there too, standing apart from the others, his expression unreadable. They boarded Kythorax's personal ship, a vessel designed for long-range hunting expeditions. As they traveled through hyperspace, the Supreme Hunter explained the trial. "We will spend 10 days in the frontier. You will hunt, survive, and learn. Those who complete this trial will graduate with the highest honors." The Abyssal Frontier was everything Marcus had heard, and worse. Jagged black mountains rose from toxic swamps. The sky churned with permanent storms. Creatures here had evolved in brutal conditions, making them incredibly dangerous. On the third day, as the group tracked a herd of armored herbivores, Kythorax fell back to walk beside Marcus. "Tell me, human, why did you come to this academy?" Marcus thought carefully. "Because I wanted to prove that humans belong here, that we're not just weak creatures from a safe world." "And have you proven this?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I've survived, but I still wonder if I'm truly a hunter." Kythorax made a sound that might have been laughter. "You think like prey when you should think like a teacher. You have shown something more valuable than strength. You have shown that different methods can succeed." That night, as they camped in a defensive position, an alarm sounded on their equipment. A distress beacon, close by. "A civilian transport," one student reported. "Crashed 3 kilometers north. Protocol says we avoid engagement," another student said. "Rescue operations are not our mission." But Marcus was already checking his equipment. "There could be survivors. We have to help." "The area is crawling with ravagers," Veshkar said quietly. "The frontier's apex predators. Going there would be suicide." Marcus looked at Kythorax. The Supreme Hunter's compound eyes reflected the campfire. "What do you command, Brother Hunter?" Kythorax asked. Everyone turned to stare at Marcus. The Supreme Hunter was giving him authority over the group. Marcus's mind raced. Ravagers hunted in packs, were incredibly fast, and had armor plating that deflected most weapons. A direct confrontation would fail. But humans had always succeeded through cooperation and strategy. "We split into 3 teams, Marcus said, his voice growing confident. Team 1 creates a distraction, drawing the Ravagers away. Team 2 moves to the crash site and extracts survivors. Team 3 provides cover and escape route." "You would risk 12 Academy hunters for unknown civilians?" one student challenged. "Yes," Marcus said firmly. "Because that's what separates hunters from predators. We protect, not just kill." Kythorax clicked his mandibles approvingly. "You have your orders. Move out." They executed Marcus's plan flawlessly. Team 1, led by Veshkar, used noise and movement to draw most Ravagers away from the crash site. Marcus led Team 2, finding 6 survivors trapped in the wreckage. civilians from a mining colony, injured but alive. As they extracted the survivors, 3 Ravagers broke through the distraction. These creatures were massive, with jaws that could crush metal and claws that sparked against rock. Marcus didn't hesitate. He positioned his team defensively, using the terrain to limit the Ravagers' movement. When one lunged at him, Marcus dodged and struck at its leg joint, a weak point he'd studied in academy files. The battle was fierce. Marcus took a hit that sent him sprawling, his ribs screaming in pain. But he got back up, 'cause humans always got back up. Veshkar's team returned, attacking the Ravagers from behind. Together, the combined teams drove the creatures back, giving them enough time to escape with the survivors. They returned to camp bloodied and exhausted. The civilians would live because of their actions. As medics treated the wounded, Kythorax approached Marcus. "You were injured protecting me," the Supreme Hunter said, referring to a moment when Marcus had pushed him clear of a Ravager's attack. "You're my teacher," Marcus said simply. "Of course I protected you." Kythorax was silent for a long moment. Then he placed one of his 4 hands on Marcus's shoulder, a gesture of deep respect among Vrexians. "I have lived for many centuries, Marcus Chen. I have trained thousands of hunters, but you have taught me something I had forgotten. That the greatest strength is not in the kill, but in the choice to protect." The brother hunt continued for 7 more days, but something had changed. The other students looked at Marcus differently now. Veshkar approached him on the final night. "I was wrong about you, human," the Korthax said quietly. "You are not prey. You are not even just a hunter. You are something I had no word for, but now I understand. You are what my people call a pack leader." When they returned to Station Apex 7, Marcus graduated top of his class. The ceremony was attended by representatives from across the galaxy. Kythorax himself presented Marcus with his certification. "The first human brother hunter," the Supreme Hunter announced. "But not the last. Humanity has shown us that strength takes many forms." Unquote. As Marcus held his graduation certificate, he looked out at the crowd. He saw instructor Zextra, who had once called him the weakest recruit in history, now nodding with approval. He saw his packmates, standing proud. He saw representatives from Earth, tears in their eyes. Most importantly, he saw what he had proven, not just to the galaxy, but to himself. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest, but they had something equally valuable. They had heart, intelligence, and the unbreakable will to never give up. The weak Earth native had been ridiculed, but now, named brother by the Supreme Hunter himself, Marcus Chen had opened a door for all of humanity. And through that door, millions of humans would follow, ready to show the galaxy what Earth's children could truly achieve.